But I've had another story that somewhat similar, but go ahead. I'll talk about it later.
I mean, I was just saying, like, if you find what I like about Raphael here is you're like seeing the other person in a sense, right? Like I appreciate you called out that they might feel bad about it. That's not necessarily the case, but like going from that
No.
perspective, right? Like I mean, in the sense, but I'm just saying, like when you have somebody where you want to like fix it with them, that it. I mean, if you're when you have trouble talking to somebody, it might be because you don't believe it can be fixed, or like it. I think once for me anyway, when I flipped it on my head and I started to think about, you know, we both want to be better together. I think that made it a little bit easier. And you don't have to get it all right at once, right? You just start with a simple thing. As I said, the really simple thing to say is like, I don't think I'm good at this, but I'd like to talk about something, right? Or I'd like to talk about the interaction we had, and that's all you have to say. And if you could just say that, then you guys go to a room, and then it'll work out. It's awkward, uh, but it's also awkward
This is the
not
step I
talking to
don't know
somebody
how
for
to do.
6 months.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just practice. You just try it. And by the way, there are people who just have so vastly different communication styles, or once you have stories in your head about other people, and if it gets to a point where it's really bad. I mean, there's people like for all these I say there's definitely people in my career where I don't think I could work with them, right? And what you do in that case is you find a third person, right? You find somebody where if there's two people who really can't get along, and you need to be on the same team, then what you have is you have like a third person, maybe one person above your level, who helps you navigate these situations as a sort of neutral third party. But that's more of an extreme case. Hopefully, you can avoid getting into that situation.
The last time I've had a situation that devolves so badly that like I can't actually talk to the other person to people anymore, and I won't see them ever again. Was back in uni, and I'm very happy that doesn't happened. That never happened professionally yet, and I'm very happy
Sure.
that every conflict I've had professionally, and I've had a few, uh,
Mm-hmm.
like now they're all in the past, and people may still
Mm-hmm.
have. I mean, people have bad memories from them, but it's not going to stop us from communicating
Right.
now. And I don't have anything
Sure.
long lasting for that, and that's good. Another
And
story,
the more
yeah.
experiences you have like that will be good, by the way. You said you might not know how to talk about it, but maybe because you just don't have a lot of successful experiences in it. The more you have, the easier it'll get, because you'll have more confidence that it'll go better than you think.
One of the one story I have that is fairly similar to this one. So the it was a fairly big project that is split into sub teams, and so I was
Mm-hmm.
one of the sub teams, and another person was in one of the others, and so there was a tool we needed to put in place for the development of the project, and so it
Mm-hmm.
needed to be put in place quite quickly, and we all agreed on that. The problem is
Mm-hmm.
the leadership, because it was a tool to help us work and not the actual project, not the actual
Mm-hmm.
product. It was really hard to, like, everyone would say in meetings, yeah, we should do this really quickly, it's really important, and then we would have like the planning for the next stuff to do, and it was never in there, even though like
Mm-hmm.
everyone agreed that we really needed it, and we needed it
Mm-hmm.
early in the lifetime of the product. So there was a person on one of the other sub teams that just joined the project, and
Mm-hmm.
in theory, compared to how everything was supposed to be happening, and the overarching plan at the start, they were supposed to be in charge of that thing, purely because of the structure of the sub team and whatever. But it was my sub team that was working on that specific part of the project at the time, and I've been working with these kind of tools previously, so I knew what
Mm-hmm.
to expect and I knew what to do. Whereas that other person was very new to the project and didn't really, even though that was supposed to be their role, but they were also really busy with other stuff, so like they couldn't really do it right now. And so
Mm-hmm.
my sub team, and specifically me, took the decision ourselves to do it anyway, and just
Mm-hmm.
like start working on it, because it's never going to be on the planning. We all agree that that we need to do it, so like someone has to do it anyway, and at least start it enough that next time we do the planning, it's less scary to say we continue what thing we started.
Okay.
Because putting the like if you're planning long term for a complex deadline for a project, and you're like you need that tool, but maybe you can wait next week. Whereas if you actually started having the tool already and it does a few things, it's less scary to just say, well, we can have a small part of the planning that is for evolving that tool, and we know it's not going to slow us down because it has already started. We know how it's going.
It's kind of like a reverse sunk cost fallacy. Like it's the sunk cost fallacy, but like exploited for good.
Yeah, definitely. It's exactly this. Is well, if you've started and it's the same thing with artists and a blank page. It's as soon as you have started it, it's way less scary than to continue.
Yes.
That's so true.
And in a way, that is an example of the sunk cost fallacy, which is strange because I've never seen it explained this way, but it definitely is. But yeah, exactly this. And so basically, what my sub team did, and that was mostly me, was just as part of everything else you do, put a small brick in place for that tool.
Sure.
And so it's not explicitly time you're taking to put on the tool, so you're not going against the planning, but throughout a few days or a few weeks, well, that tool is going to be technically started, even though you never actually took time to do it, just because you're doing a small pieces at a time. And in my opinion, that's how you should do tools that help you, but that's another topic. It's just like do it small bits at a time. Like don't freeze the development for a week.
Sure.
And that was fairly good. The thing is, I was on that project for longer than the other person, but I was still relatively new. And so I did it by inspiring myself from other things the team has built in the past, but I didn't know it exactly, and I haven't worked on it exactly, so I did things slightly differently than how everything else was done in the rest of projects. And some of those differences, I did them purposefully because these were things that I believed to be done incorrectly in the past, mostly because we didn't know better, and now we have the experience, so we know that like if you do the same thing multiple times, of course you're going to do it differently each time because you have the experience now. And so some things I did them differently because I knew this was a better way to do it, and other things I did differently just because I didn't know or understand why it was done in a specific way before, and so I just thought I was following the same thing even though I wasn't. And so this lasted for a couple of weeks where I was doing that thing, and my subteam was doing that thing more or less on their own and just putting bricks in places. And then at some point we went to the planning and say, hey, well, we started it, so now like we can continue it fine. And so, and I had a few meetings with the person on the other subteam to showcase what I did and basically be like, well, here's how it is right now. Of course, it could change, but like these are the foundations. It's better if we start from there, but it could change. Like it's not something fixed. What happened after that is that person went with the other person from their subteam, which was again officially supposed to be the one doing this. And for a few weeks, they discussed it between them what they wanted to do. And so they discussed it completely between them, and I had no idea of what they were talking about. And then 3 or 4 weeks later, they came and did a presentation for the entire team of, okay, so here's how it's going to be, here's what we're going to change, etc., etc. And so, and that meeting became quite heated because many things that person mentioned they were going to change. I was like, okay, but like there's a very good reason I didn't do it this way, and like I don't think it's a good idea to do it the way you're proposing. And so they took it as me being dismissive of their work for the past 3 weeks, where I was taking everything they said as dismissive of what I did the 3 weeks earlier.
Sure.
And so it became very heated as both of us.
Well, that's already in a meeting situation, right? Like that's in a public. That's already
with 5 or 6 people.
Sure.
And so and because well, both of us had kind of worked on inside our own sub team with no clear communication, and so this is one of the like professionally, this is one of the worst situations I've been.
Mhm.
I'm not going into the full details, but it's ended
Sure.
very heated. And then afterwards, we had another person on our team who went to talk with them, who went to talk with me, etc. And then slowly rebuilt everything. And then now it's all water
Okay.
under the bridge. I'm not
Sure.
good. I'm not very good friend with that
I don't
colleague, but
think-
we don't have any like issues
Sure.
together, so it's all good, I think.
I mean, so retroactively, or thinking what's the word? They're basically looking back on it now.
Retrospectively,
Retrospectively, what would you have done differently if you like? I mean, what I'm wondering is, like, sometimes meetings are the right time to do this. Like, do you think that there should have been something resolved before the meeting happened, or do you think the meeting was the right time for the conflict to occur?
The first thing is, I think I should have found a way, but I don't know how we would have done it. In the 3 or 4 weeks where they were talking about it, after I had worked on it, I shouldn't have let them work on it by themselves. I should have found a way
Okay.
to be in those meetings, and so I could
Mhm.
get my points across very early in their work, so
Mhm.
it wouldn't come later as dismissive of what they had done.
Sure.
I think if I had the occasion to mention all of this very earlier,
Mhm.
it wouldn't have
Mhm.
bubbled down that much. Another thing that was mentioned by colleagues afterward, who one of the things they mentioned was like, if the meeting starts to heat up, just like cancel the meeting right there. But honestly, I don't know if I can just be. I don't see myself being just like, no, this meeting is going nowhere. Let's stop there, because that seems to me to be
Sure.
even more dismissive of the actual discussion, because it may be heated. In some way, it was the start of an actual discussion. The heat,
Yeah.
of course, makes it way less effective, but it is a discussion nonetheless.
I would also ask you this question. So you've had this heated discussion with this team, and it was rough, and then you resolved it over the course of a couple weeks, I guess, after.
Yeah, but
Do
around
you
there.
feel stronger with this team now? Because now you know that you can get upset with this team, and they can get upset with you, and you guys can work through it and still grow. You know what I'm saying? Do you feel that way? Do you feel like you've
I don't.
bonded a little bit?
I
No?
don't know, because a few months later, like, project life changed, and so I don't interact that
Hmm.
much with these people now.
Okay.
I the what I did learn is the ways to phrase my requests so they don't seem that dismissive,
Sure.
even though I'm saying the same thing in the end.
Sure.
Um,
That's a good skill. Yeah.
and what I did, when I had to work with this person later, is I would be very, very explicit and to the matter of fact on everything I found there was an issue, etc. So it was very
Sure.
clear that I was talking about the contents, and I, like, at no
Sure. You
point,
always want to, you want, yeah.
and
Yeah.
at no
You know,
point it's the
you
question
never want
of,
the other person to feel stupid or incompetent. You just want to focus on the work for sure.
especially because in
You,
this case we were working with external systems we had no control over, and in
sure.
many situations the really dumb stuff was not caused by anyone at this company. So in any way, like, no, like, at no point in that discussion was it a problem of knowledge or technical know-how or competency,
Right.
because all
Sure.
the bad stuff that happened
It
to
was
us, whether,
communication.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
It
so
was a communication
at no
issue.
point
Yeah.
was the at no point did I attempt, or do I believe, that there's a problem in their way of working. The only thing that I
Sure.
think there's a problem in is communication, and I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
fair to say.